Good afternoon, I'm Nana, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I am a US citizen who a year ago moved abroad to Colombia, South America. Here I am. This is my lovely apartment that I purchased a little over a year ago, and I have many different videos discussing the hows, to's, whys, good, bad, everything about my move and my life here in Colombia. So feel free to watch other videos if this is your first time here. Today, what I wanted to discuss is why I'm living where I'm living, which is in Eastern Antioquia. It's about 40 minutes southeast of Medellin, and why I did not choose Medellin, the city, to live in. After watching countless YouTube videos by wonderful expats on Medellin, I was in love with the city online. I then took 2 different trips to Colombia before I made my decision to move here. And I really encourage anyone that's planning on moving to a different country to visit at least once for an extended amount of time, or at least 2 different times, and really get to know the area and decide whether it's the right country for you. And if you do like the country in general, what is your favorite area? So those are important things to see in person, and I'll tell you why. Before visiting Colombia, and Medellin was my first stop, I pictured Medellin as it's shown on the internet, and rightly so, as a beautiful, lush city. Yes, there's some tall buildings, but I didn't picture it really to be super busy and crowded, a lot of noise, anything like that. I just thought it was a semi-tropical, just lush, fabulous place to live with plenty of activity, but also a little bit more low-key. Well, I was in for a bit of a surprise when I arrived. I do not want anyone to think that I am discriminating in any way against the city of Medellin. I think it has so much to offer, and there are many, many expats who have been very happy there for a number of years. So I would not discourage you against moving there, but I just want to explain why I didn't make the decision to live in Medellin. And today, what I'd like to do is go over 9 different reasons why I chose not to move to Medellin. Instead, I moved to Eastern Antioquia, and that is a region southeast of Medellin, particularly where I am. It actually goes on beyond where I am, but I'm in the southeastern area, which encompasses the small city or large town, if you will, of Rio Negro, the neighborhood of Llano Grande, which I highly recommend, very popular, close to the international airport, El Retiro, which is unbelievably charming, and that's a little closer to where I live. And then there's also La Ceja, which is further out in the country, also very appealing, and still quite close to Medellin too. Reason number 1 why I chose not to move to Medellin is the traffic. I was astounded, and we are talking tight streets, up and down hills, meandering around tight curves. Not all the streets are even labeled with signs. It's very, very congested, although very lush, I'll give it that. Lots of trees, lots of gardens, parks, but it's condensed, if you will. And I was surprised to see that. With the traffic comes major trucks up and down these little roads, and I can't tell you how many motorcycles. Motorcycles are a popular means of transportation in Colombia. Owning a car for most people is considered a little bit more of a luxury. So the average Colombian rides a motorcycle, and sometimes a husband and wife will share just one motorcycle. Because they are so popular, the streets are inundated with them. And motorcycles take up not just the area in front of every car and behind every car, but also to the left and right within each lane. So there's just a massive amount of that. And you do have to be careful crossing the street and look and make sure There are no cars whipping around the corner, and certainly no motorcycles either, which are a little harder to see. There also is a rush hour, being that it's a city, and it's complete and utter gridlock in the morning and also in the late afternoon up until about maybe 5, 6 o'clock. So just a lot of traffic and congestion that made the city seem unappealing to me. And also because the sidewalks aren't wide, the streets are narrow. So when you have a lot of traffic that's sandwiched in like a sardine can like that, I found that not appealing to me. The second reason I chose not to make Medellin my home is the smog. And actually very few people bring that up on their videos. And I'm surprised. Maybe it's because they're not accustomed to what smog versus smog-free environments are like. For instance, Florida is flat as a pancake. So when the wind blows, there goes, any type of toxins from the air. So that's not an issue there. But I lived many years in the Los Angeles area, which is a basin surrounded by mountains. And guess what Medellin is? It's like a basin. Even though the bottom part, the valley where much of the city is still at thousands of feet, the mountains go up to 8,000 feet, surrounding it literally like a bowl. So my first afternoon when I arrived at the airport in Medellin, and by the way, the airport's out in Llano Grande, which is part of Rio Negro, and you have to go through this tunnel. It's an amazing road system they have. And you go through this tunnel. When you come out the other side, behold is the city. Well, behold, I saw practically nothing but smog. So the visibility was really low. And I thought, well, maybe it's just kind of a foggy day. But honestly, I know the difference. And so that brought me to look up the air quality in Medellin. And it's fair, moderate, and sometimes not great at all. And I've always lived a really healthy lifestyle. And I thought at my age, close to 70, I really don't want to be inhaling those type of toxins on a daily basis. So that said a lot too. Next with the smog, as I just mentioned, is the visibility. So I wanted a view. As you can see out here, it's a gray day, so it's looking a little funky out. But I wanted a great view. But in Medellin, I looked at some apartments there, and the view wasn't that great because I couldn't even see the mountains beyond the central part of the city that I was in. It was just thick with that smog. So it really wasn't that breathtaking view that one would imagine. And certainly there are days that are like that. And those are days with high wind after rain, and they can be much clearer. But it's never crystal clear there. You can count on that. While we're on the subject of smog, I'm going to bring up reason number 3, and that is heat. So let's go back to that basin idea. When you have an incredible amount of energy, an incredible amount of heat coming from the amount of buildings, cars, trucks, motorcycles, all of that, and you have that smog which holds everything down, there is what's called a heat dome in Medellin. It's always been there, but it was not that noticeable. But in more recent years, sadly, with global warming, there's a major heat dome there. And to give you an example, when in El Retiro, it's, let's say, 75 degrees, it can be as hot as 85 in Medellin. If it's a hot spell and it's 78, which is rare in El Retiro, it can be in the high 80s in Medellin. So you can look this up, but Medellin was called the city of eternal spring, like forever. And that was an area where you could move and you did not need air conditioning. Even in these high rises, most of them were built without any air conditioning. But now, in recent years, people have had to add that air conditioning because it's hot and it doesn't cool down enough at night. Where I live, it cools down into the upper 50s at night, which is perfect sleeping weather. I just love it. And I'm actually another 1,000 feet higher than Rio Negro and El Retiro up a country road here. And at this elevation, 8,000 feet, it's definitely on the cool side. So my typical day is more like 72, 73. And I don't mind it at all, especially coming from hot and humid Florida. The climate here is arid and lovely, and I can walk for hours here and not even break a sweat. I just love it. And now for number 4, and that is the hills in Medellin itself. And that's something to be aware of when you choose a town or a city in Colombia to move to, is how agile are you? How capable are you of going up and down super steep hills? Like for instance, in San Francisco, it's very, very intense, especially if you're carrying groceries. Can you imagine? So I found Medellin extremely hilly. And there are some neighborhoods like Laureles, which is more flat. But again, if you want to do some shopping in El Poblado or a different neighborhood, you are going to find that problem going from block to block, from restaurant to a store, anything like that, super, super steep hills there. So that was another reason why I did not decide on Medellin. Before I made my move, I was highly analytical. I thought about everything, and I'm really glad I did. I can remember years ago, I had friends in New York who I would see often. And over the years, I've gone back there so many times. I love New York City. I think it's the most vital, exciting city in the world. But at the same time, I would never choose to live there. Just the thought of having to go every time you needed a few little things, you would walk to your local, store, your grocery store, or whatnot, and buy what you could literally carry back to your apartment. And for me, that's kind of a pain. I also don't like the delivery services in Colombia, the main one's called Rappi. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't like it. If I lived in a city like Medellin, I'd probably have restaurant food delivered from time to time because it's so inexpensive. But I really like to do my own grocery shopping. I enjoy that, and I find I shop better on a budget, and especially for things like produce and meat and whatnot. I need to be able to see it myself. Oftentimes with the delivery service, you're kind of disappointed when you get your groceries and your bananas are overripe already and your meat that they chose is like a fatty one. You could have gone through the stack of those packages in the section of the market yourself and found a better slice of meat, those types of things. But I could not imagine my typical week and what I do for shopping. Sometimes I need to buy a big refill bag of Petunia's food. Dog food is super heavy. What if I need dog food that day? I need some more liters of bubble water that I love. Heavy things. That becomes next to impossible, even in a flat surface, let alone with hills, to haul all that with your everyday grocery items. It's just not going to happen. So then you'd probably end up having to take an Uber back, and even just getting out of the grocery store, getting it all into the Uber, all of that is a big undertaking. And that was just something else I thought about. And I wanted the convenience of being able to have a small car to go and get what I need when I needed to, and not have the hindrance of having to get a taxi or an Uber anytime I wanted to do that. And number 5 is the amount of tourism. There is, fortunately, I'm so happy Medellin is popular. It's such a great ambassador for Colombia because people go there and love it. And believe me, to visit, I would love it too. Remember, I am not criticizing Medellin as a bad place to go. I just wouldn't want to live there full time. So there are quite a few tourists in the nicer neighborhoods, the more popular neighborhoods like El Poblado. And they're also as attracted to me to go because there's great restaurants and other cultural activities going on there, group events for expats from Facebook and whatnot. But there are a lot of tourists. And the typical tourists in Medellin are young men. Well, if you haven't guessed already, there's a reason why all these men come as tourists to Medellin, because the women are so beautiful. And it's a party city because of that. They come for long weekends or maybe a week on vacation from work, and they are rare and ready to party. So with that comes added noise, just a lot of hooting and hollering and things like that. And believe me, if I was still in my 20s or 30s, I would find that entertaining. I guess I've turned into not necessarily a grumpy old lady, but I'm a laid back person, and I just like atmosphere a little bit more mellow. I don't really want my life to feel like I'm living in a frat house all the time. You know what I mean? And now that segues right into reason number 6, which is sex tourism in Medellin. There are a lot of hookers. I mean, I hate to say it, but if you go out in the evening, they are all over the place. I see them coming on to the young men expats, and certainly not all of them are, but I think I have some good hooker radar after these 6 decades of existence here on the planet. So I just don't really find that appealing. To see that going on and see those looking for that. Yeah, so it's just part of it. And I'm not a nighttime person as far as going out, maybe an early dinner to meet a few friends, something like that. So I wouldn't encounter too much of that. But I do want to be clear with everyone that if you do like to go out, to a nightclub, dancing, that type of thing, there's all sorts of unscrupulous things going on. You can just tell. So not for me. And number 7, that's noise pollution. I've mentioned the traffic, which obviously makes it very noisy in Medellin. The buildings are very close to the road. As I told you, the roads are really narrow. So your apartment would be right over all of this noise. They're usually not set back unless you get way back into the hills. So with all that traffic, obviously there's a lot of noise, and the motorcycles are extremely noisy, particularly I think they're Japanese ones that are vroom, vroom, vroom. You hear all that going on all the time. So yeah, there's noise pollution there. But also because the buildings are so close together, and oftentimes in the evening, people don't need their air conditioning at night. A lot of windows get open and it just is loud. You hear people talking, and heaven forbid, if you're near an Airbnb, which that can happen in some buildings, even when they say they don't allow them, that there can be heavy duty partying going on. And that's something I just didn't want to risk in a lease or an apartment purchase. Now for number 8, and that's safety. And Colombia, first of all, gets such a bad rap about it being such an unsafe country. I just urge everyone to look at the violent crime rates in the United States. Just pick the top cities and look at their violent crime rates compared to that in Medellin, and you'll see it's umpteen times higher in those cities. So you need to be always selective of the city you live in and the neighborhood you live in, to keep those types of things from happening. Now in Medellin, even in the tourist areas, I hear there is petty theft, and from time to time, armed petty theft. So if you can imagine, you're walking down the street and somebody pulls up on a motorcycle with a gun and demands the iPhone in your hand, that's a very frightening thing. I can't even imagine having a gun pointed at you. Most people this does not happen to, but it does happen from time to time there. And that's something I just didn't want to risk. There's also a lot more pickpocketing going on. And let's just say Rome, for instance. I have been there several times, and one time I had my purse snatched. It's just something that happens in cities. So you plan ahead for that. You make sure you don't have your regular wallet in your purse, that you have your cash and your credit card in a pocket instead, your phone in another pocket that no one can see. And if somebody wants to grab your purse, then so be it. I really think women have an advantage with that, because usually that thief is just going to grab the purse. So they're welcome to have nothing. I usually keep a few dollars in it. Well, not dollars, but pesos, just so that they don't leave empty-handed if it ever happened. But I don't do that where I live out in the countryside here. It's just not necessary. And another thing to think about is not just petty theft or, heaven forbid, armed robbery, but also scams. And when you get into a city environment, the rate of scams is so many more fold, I can't even tell you. And I know that from living in Los Angeles all those years, and the scams. Back then there was no internet, but there were classified ads and things like that. You know, if you wanted to buy something, there were just all sorts of scammy things. I'm not even going to go into the details, but fortunately I was savvy enough to not be taken advantage of. But in cities, you have to be much more aware of that. And if English is not your first language, I just consider it, at least for me, because it's not my first language. My Spanish is still pretty lame. I am not at my best as far as having my intuition working at 100%. Why? I have that handicap of not speaking the language. So how can I judge subtle nuances and things like that? It would be impossible for me. So that was another reason why I did not choose Medellin. And last but not least is number 9. And that I would say was close to top of the list why I did not choose Medellin. And that is the price point. The cost of rentals, unless you're in a, I would consider, much less desirable neighborhood where I would be a little bit afraid to live, the prices are, by US standards, they're certainly not expensive. But when you think that in general, the dollar is worth 4 times more than the Colombian peso, these apartment rentals and apartments available for purchase are not 75% less than the US, maybe half. But when you get out into the outlying areas where I am, yes, you get into closer to a quarter of the price, maybe a third. I would say my apartment is closer to a quarter just because I scored such a great view. But it's just more expensive to rent or buy a home in Medellin. And that's true pretty much anywhere in the world, and particularly in the US. Like if you want to live in Manhattan, oh my gosh, compared to out in the suburbs in New Jersey, huge difference. So that was something I saw right away. I could afford to purchase an apartment in Medellin, but it would not have had the view that I have now. And it would have probably been smaller, maybe a little less updated. I would have had to compromise. And that was something that I would have done if all those other no's that I just listed weren't there. I would put that aside, but with everything else, that price point would make my budget that much more tight. And it's not just housing. The restaurants there are more expensive. The grocery stores there are more expensive. You have to go off the beaten track to find local farmers markets and that type of thing. And again, these are areas that I wouldn't be familiar with. I don't know if I'd be comfortable going alone, you know, again, in different barrios of this big city. But where I live, I have so many different local grocers and butchers and fruit stands, and they're all safe to go to, and I just feel so much more comfortable here. So I hope these reasons will help you a lot. And listen, especially if you're a young person, don't listen to me because I can tell you, I mean, I've had that lifestyle before. Medellin is fantastic. And like in any big city, of course, you have to have some good intuition and take precautions against crime, you would anywhere in the world. That's not a reason not to live there. And I encourage you to live there. It's not someplace I want to be at this phase in my life. I just want peace and calm and tranquility. But knowing that it's there, and I'll give you an example. For instance, healthcare. Now, close to where I am is San Vicente Hospital, which the main location is in Medellin. The one in Rio Negro, which is right by the airport, Google it. It's gorgeous, state-of-the-art architecture, some of the best doctors in South America there. And I have that accessible to me. But let's say I got sick and I wanted several opinions. I wouldn't just go to San Vicente Hospital and speak with the one or two specialists they had. I would also go to Medellin because it is a major city and there are very good doctors there. In fact, I would, no matter what was wrong with me, if anything was in question, I would also seek advice from a doctor in Medellin. Again, because I would want the very, very best in that situation. Knowing that Medellin is only 35, 40 minutes from me, that gives me peace of mind as far as healthcare, that I know it's right there if I need something major done. I also, for instance, have great shopping in my tri-town area here, but it can't hold a candle to the shopping in Medellin. So it's there. And when I was first setting up my apartment, I took some Uber rides into Medellin, went with a friend, went to IKEA, places like that to grab things that I wanted and liked. And knowing that I have access to all of that type of shopping, they even have stores similar to Costco there and just fabulous boutiques. If I needed, for instance, something that was a US made product, the major malls there have almost every chain store that's in the US. Granted, you pay some duty on that, but if you absolutely needed it, it is there. So all in all, I feel I live in the perfect place that's right for me, but this is something that you have to decide what's right for you. And again, coming and visiting at least once, if not twice, really doing a lot of research. And most important, if anything at all, is to ask yourself those questions. Like, what is your typical day like where you are now? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What would make you uncomfortable if you couldn't do that anymore? Those are the kinds of questions you should be asking yourself before you pull the plug and make the big move. So I hope you're a little more enlightened now. I really appreciate you watching, and I look forward to sharing many more informative videos with you. Thanks so much for supporting my channel. Please like and subscribe. It really helps me bring you more content because believe me, these videos take a long time. I am not very tech savvy, so I've had to learn a whole lot, but probably what would take a young person, maybe 2 hours of editing, it takes me 2 days. So hopefully I'll get a little better at that. But I really appreciate everyone's support, and I look forward to showing you so much more about this new country that I love. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.